Young girl found adrift at sea. Decades later she reveals horrifying truth. As Dr. Arthur Duperrault and his wife Jean has been saving money to make the journey for a long time, they also took their children. 14-year-old Brian, 11-year-old Terry Jo and 7-year-old Renee, so that they would have a vacation they would never forget. Unfortunately, while it was true that one of them would never forget it, the reason would be far more heartbreaking. The ship set sail with the Duperrault family safely on board. Julian Harvey was the captain of the vessel and he had brought his wife Mary Danae along for the ride too. The trip went just as the Duperraults had planned. During that idyllic period, the Bluebell headed east aiming for the small islands of Bimini, and from there the Duperraults hit Sandy Point, a community on the island of Great Abaco. Here was the perfect spot for the group to drop anchor and enjoy a spot of snorkeling. They also gathered shells on the beautifully colored sands. Then toward the end of his stay on the island, Arthur Duperrault spoke with Roderick W. Pinder, Sandy Point's village commissioner. However, her brother's cries woke her later in the evening and she knew immediately that something was awry. "I was awakened by my brother screaming, 'Help Daddy, help!'" Terry Jo, who now goes by the name Terry Duperrault Fassbender, told Fox News. In fact, Captain Harvey, a 44-year-old military pilot with a troubled past, had chosen that particular night to execute his wife of just 4 months. The reason: Harvey had not long taken out a life insurance policy on Danae. Apparently Harvey intended to dispose of Danae's body overboard and report her as lost at sea. However, this wasn't the first time that Harvey had brutally lost a wife. Later it was reportedly discovered that the captain had extraordinarily escaped from a car crash that had taken the life of one of his 5 previous spouses. He had already received sizable insurance payments after both his yacht and his powerboat had sunk. However, with this newest apparent scam, things didn't quite go to plan. Dr. Duperrault allegedly saw Harvey attacking Danae and intervened, only for Harvey to finish him. Desperate to get rid of any other witnesses to the crime, Harvey then reportedly executed the remaining members of the Duperrault family who'd been awake during the altercation, except for Terry Jo, who had been sleeping in her cabin below deck. When she emerged a few minutes later, Terry Jo found her mother and brother in a pool of blood on the cabin floor and quickly went to the captain to find out what was going on. However, the only answer she got was Harvey pushing her back to the decks below, and the girl cowered back in her bunk, now alone and very afraid. She stayed there for a while until water began flooding her cabin, which made her venture up once more. Then Harvey, who had opened up the ship's sea valves with the intention of scuttling the vessel, gave Terry Jo a rope attached to a dinghy to hold. Later, Terry Jo's friend, Richard Logan, would speculate that Harvey planned on executing the girl as well. Logan told Today in 2010. When he saw her on deck he realized, "Oh my God, there's a possibility she might survive, I better finish her." So he went forward to get a knife or something to finish her, but she did not hold on to the line. Instead, Terry Jo dropped the rope and Harvey allegedly dove into the sea to catch up with the dinghy. In effect, he abandoned her on the sinking ship, but the newly orphaned girl was a lot tougher than she looked. She then unfastened a tiny cork float from the boat and sailed away on it just as the Bluebell disappeared beneath the waves thereafter. Wearing just the light blouse and rosy pants, she was the mercy of the elements at night. She was exposed to the freezing winds, and in the morning the harsh sunlight would scorch her skin. With Terry Jo drifting alone in the middle of the ocean, the odds were slim that a passing plane or vessel would catch sight of her. But one day a small aircraft passing overhead raised her hopes. Alas, the pilots did not see her. That said, someone, or rather something, had spotted her. One afternoon Terry Jo spied some mysterious forms beneath the ocean's surface near to her aft, coming closer. A panicked Terry Jo was soon relieved when she saw that they were only porpoises. However, that relief was short-lived, as the harsh environment soon took its toll and Terry Jo began to hallucinate. At one point, for instance, she imagined a small barren island up ahead, but when she attempted to splash toward it, the island sadly vanished. At last, tired, hungry and traumatized, Terry Jo collapsed into oblivion. Yet fate still had a hand to play. Eventually Captain Theo, a Greek freighter passing through the Northwest Province Channel that cuts through the Bahamas, discovered and rescued Terry Jo. She was near demise with a fever of 105 degrees Fahrenheit and suffering sunburn and severe dehydration. The executor had claimed that a sudden storm had battered the ship and sparked a fire, ultimately sinking the vessel. He also said that he had unsuccessfully attempted to revive the girl after finding her in the water. However, soon after news of Terry Jo's rescue had reached him, Harvey took his own life. Police discovered his lifeless body behind his hotel room's bathroom door. Meanwhile, Terry Jo recovered from her horrific ordeal in a Miami hospital, and finally, some 7 days after her dramatic rescue, police officials were able to talk to the brave little girl. It was then that Terry Jo gave her first account of that terrible night. Terry Jo's family also later memorialized the deceased at the Fort Howard Memorial Park in Wisconsin. However, life for Terry Jo went on after being released from the hospital.